thanks for tuning in today. This is Yaz.life and my name is Yaz. This is the 8th part of the Voices in Your Head series of videos. The link to this playlist is in the description below. And as always, I recommend you watch them so that you can catch up and keep up with the contents in this video. A summary of what we've covered in this series so far includes a brief understanding of transactional analysis and ego states, how ego states work, how to distinguish between them, and what they look and sound like at their best and at their worst. And finally, a breakdown of all of the ego states, as you can see right here. Using ego states in our everyday lives is not only an extremely effective way of reflecting and learning about ourselves, but it can also support us in the challenging experiences that life tends to chuck our way. In my experience, top of the list in usefulness would have to be in relationships. Any and all of them, including the most important one we will ever have, and that's the one with ourselves. But it doesn't end there, as ego states are also useful at work, at home, with money, to lose weight, to gain confidence, to become assertive, and much, much more. You just wait and see what I've got in store for you. How to get started? Look, to begin with, we would need to figure out which ego states we move in and out of the most. So that is our default ego states. We tend to have at least 2 or 3 default states that we are the most comfortable in. These states are determined by our upbringing and those that were present during this time. The previous videos in this series will have given you a basic insight into how to do this. So I'll use me as an example to make it easier to understand. To begin with, we place a big, bold declaration right here, stating, I hereby declare my mum and dad to be the best mum and dad in the entire universe. They did the best that they could do, as did their parents, in the situation they were in, and I will forever be grateful for them and all they have ever done for me. What's the point of that? Psychology is not about blame. It never has been. And talking about our upbringing and our parents is not about blame. It never has been. Actually, it's the absolute opposite. Psychology and the work we're doing here is only about taking responsibility and owning our feelings. When we discuss our parents, or anyone in our upbringing for that matter, it is not to bring about judgment or blame. It is to understand how and why we do what we do, so that we can make the changes we wish to without pointing the finger and telling everyone else how it's their fault. Okay, so in my upbringing, my mum's default positions were critical parent and free child, and my dad's default positions were nurturing parent and adapted child. My dad was at work most of the time, and so I was around my mum for the majority of my upbringing. I was adapted child and free child to my mum's critical parent and free child, until I was around 18-19 years old. After this time, I moved from adapted child to rebellious child. And boy, did I rebel. I pushed the boundaries hard until about 7 years ago, when I managed to put into practice what we are discussing now. This information now gives me the ability to determine my default positions more accurately and understand how they came to be. My default positions were critical parent when in a position of authority, like my mum was with me. I was adapted child with those that had authority over me, as I behaved with my mum. And I was in free child whenever I could let my hair down, as my mum was when she wasn't in critical parent. We can also use this information to figure out which states I am going to get on with, or which ones I'm going to profusely clash with. Let's see. I'm going to get on with nurturing parent. I'm going to get on with free child and adapted child. Why? Because 2 of those positions I already know very well. I'm comfortable in them. And the other one is all about loving. I'm going to clash with critical parent and rebellious child, and I'm probably going to find the adult boring, or maybe even mistake them for critical parent. Now, this gives me a great insight into a general overview of my ego states and the ones that I'm going to get on with, or the ones I may not. A key factor to making sure that I get it right that you're able to identify the ego states correctly is to consider all three distinguishing factors, and they are tone of voice, body language, and message. Often, I've seen critical parent and rebellious child get mixed up, or nurturing parent and free child. They get misidentified. Why? Because they have identical body language and tone of voice in certain instances. There are slight tweaks in the language, the message, and that's the only way to distinguish. If you get it wrong, there can be huge consequences. But look, we'll discuss that in later videos. Now, your first task is to gather the data as I have done in my example, and to use this to figure out your default ego states. Which ones you are comfortable with and which ones you will clash with or just find really difficult to be around. Once you have done that, we can use the data to analyze which ego states we use in which particular aspects of our lives. The kinds of questions we can answer to gauge this would be: which ego state do I tend to be in most when I am at home? If I live with somebody, which ego state do I tend to be in around them? If I have children and/or a partner, then which ego state do I tend to communicate with them from the most? If I work, then which ego state am I generally in at work, and more specifically when I am around my manager? If I study, then which ego state am I in at my university, college, or place of education, and which state am I in when studying or revising at home? Okay, loads of information there, and I think that's enough for you to ponder over for now. Go off and complete the first task as per my example, including which ego states you get on with, which you don't, then answer as many of the questions we've discussed. Get this information together and let's let the fun begin. In the next video, we will be discussing relationships and how you can use ego states to develop healthy communication, assertive behaviors, and ultimately, happiness in your relationships. Finishing up, if you like what you see and want to help me create more videos like this one, then go and show me some loving and support over at patreon.com. If you have any questions, opinions, or experiences you'd like to share, please do pop them in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. Part 9 of the Voices in Your Head series will be coming soon, so make sure you subscribe to the channel, press that bell button so you don't miss a thing.